Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me on this microphone? It's a pleasure to greet you here in Riga. I have been entrusted with a rather unusual mission, and that is to speak to space scientists gathered here from around Europe about the pre-scientific view of the world, which in Latvian folklore centers around the sun as the most visible, and in our daily life, the most important element of cosmic order and of the world as it functions. So I will try and give you a very brief sketch of how the world looks like to our ancestors as reflected through our vast collection. We have about 1 million variants of quatrains about all sorts of things, about life and death, about youth and old age, about joy and sorrow, about suffering and happiness, everything you can think of, and all sorts of work. But the worldview that these songs reflect is the one that the human being has in the pre-scientific age, when they do not have any kind of technical implements, not even binoculars or anything of the sort, to look at the world around them. Only their own eyes and their own consciousness and their own understanding. And the first thing to remember about folk poetry, as distinct from science, is that science tries to simplify things, to get to the root causes of phenomena, to analyze them, to build models, which, by the way, are metaphors. Just like folk poetry is built on metonyms and metaphors, science as well, in all its models, is essentially a metaphorical activity. But it is a way of trying to feel in control of the world around you. Folk traditions and folk poetry, on the other hand, seek meaning to life. And the singing as an activity is as part of their daily life as breathing and as talking. And song, of course, is carried on the voice. It is transmitted from the mouth to the ear and, of course, thence to the brain. And it's a way of communicating with your fellow man and of sharing a way of looking at the world. A modern Latvian poet has an interesting phrase about what the world looks like to me as an individual as I look out upon it. He says, "The horizon stretches around me like a noose around my neck." And if you imagine the peasants of earlier centuries who for a number of these centuries were reduced to serfdom by foreign invaders, then you realize that a person's life would happen with that noose around their neck, which is just the horizon that they can see from where they are. And yet, amazingly, under such circumstances, and without access to science and instrumentation, people have found marvelous ways of expressing their understanding of the world, but it's an understanding that is symbolic. Meaning is sought at an emotional level as well as an intellectual one. Of course, much of that meaning is meant to give consolation to people who find life extremely hard to bear. And difficult to live, as the songs themselves will say. But the large majority of the songs are joyful, because people, I think, have an innate desire and willingness to feel joy and happiness. The sun is feminine in Latvian, saule. Saule is motherly. She dries the dew in the morning, but also orphans' tears, just like a mother dries the tears of an orphan. She warms the orphans who are sent out to pasture very early in the morning. And in our climate zone, the morning dew and the temperature in the morning is not a very pleasant one. So as the sun rises and starts to warm the world, she also warms the feet and the hands of these little shepherds who are sent out, frequently orphan children, since in previous times, as you know, mortality was very high. The sun is also up there like a divine eye looking down on the world. And whatever injustices people have to suffer, be it within a family circle, be it from society, sort of your immediate neighbors, or from the social order, which oppresses a certain class of people. The sun is up there as the eternal, ever-present witness who sees everything that happens, and one presumes that she takes note of it. We do not have the concept, the biblical concept of sin in this archaic view of the world. There is no expectation of a final judgment, of punishment in hell or reward in heaven, but there is a distinct understanding that nothing goes unnoticed, and in ways unbeknownst to us, justice will be served because the sun is up there and she represents the divine order, the divine regularity of things, and one way or another, things will be set right in the end. But the most interesting thing about the sun is when you stand in your farm or in your country cottage or simply out on a picnic in anywhere in the world, you can observe the movement of the sun around the horizon. And here on the 57th parallel north, we happen to have the 4 seasons quite distinctly marked. And what happens in that time is that the sun keeps moving in its sunset and sunrise positions throughout the year. Now, this is something that is trivial to you as planetary scientists, but to a farmer living on his land, it is extremely important to know how much shade and how much sun he can expect to have from nearby forests, from nearby woods, where to plant his next grove of birch trees, and so on and so forth. And the Latvian saying says very simply, again, very concisely and poetically, that the sun moves the width of a hen's step each day. And I'm sure that if you were to go out and measure the average hen's step that she takes, you know, one foot and another, and then compared it to the movement, to the change around the horizon, where the sun, for instance, from my country home, at midsummer, if I'm looking north, the sun rises very close to the north, northeast, and sets also at a very sharp angle to north. It's now at the upcoming equinox the only time of the year when the sun will be rising directly to my right and setting directly to my left. And then after the equinox, she will be shrinking and shrinking and getting longer, lower in her path. But when you stand by the seaside, and maybe there you'll be brought to the Baltic Sea, you can see the sun setting behind the sea. And as you look on it, there is something that looks like a path. As the sun nears the horizon and the waters of the sea, there's like a path that shines between your eyes and the sun. And our ancestors used to call it the path of the sun. That is the path that the sun takes to go to the, what we call, the other sun. And why? Well, the song says, anybody who says that the sun sleeps at night is a liar. Why? Does the sun rise in the same spot where she set? Of course not. Completely at the other side of the horizon. So obviously she's been traveling overnight. And she has been disappearing into a world which is the very contrary of what sunlight brings to us. Sun brings with it light, warmth, spring, growth, the very existence of nature and of human beings. But when she leaves us at night, all that disappears. We can't even see things anymore. And then the belief arose that the sun, with that path that she's following and disappearing into the other sun, because there must be something where she disappears to. So it's the other sun, and the other sun is the place where souls go after their trespass. And the belief also arose that she has to take these souls along only in that case if they have been, their bodies have been entrusted to Mother Earth before sunset. So she must be sure to be able to take them along. But as she goes into the other world, or the other sun, she takes along all the sorrows, all the worries, all the illnesses, all the ills of this world. And this is one very deep meaning that is attached to the movement of the sun, is that we have light and darkness, we have suffering and sorrow and illness and health, and joy and sorrow. The sun brings joy every morning and brings sorrow away every night. She is reborn, and she is a symbol of rebirth. And no wonder that Akhenaten took the sun as his symbol, in this case, for monotheistic view of the world. She is the one who brings life, and she takes it away as well. A song says, "My mother received me at birth into sheets of white linen. Mother Earth receives me at the end in her white sheets of sand." And Latvia is full of sand dunes where the sand is very light indeed, and we call it in Latvian white sand. So that there's a metaphorical parallel between the white cloth in which a baby is received at birth and the white sand where the body goes back to the Earth Mother who takes care of the body. But there's something else in the human being that apparently does not disappear in a sand hill, but the sun takes it away into the other world. The sun is a great many other things, of course. She is understood to be the dispenser of fertility, especially the fertility of fields and of crops. And there are a great many beautiful songs that will express in various poetical metaphors how the sun is sowing silver in the clearing, and the person asks, could you give me just a handful of that gold or that silver that you are sowing from your cosmic infinite resources? And one of the things that arises indirectly from this pre-scientific, if you like, pre-modern world view is that the place of the human in the world is one of a mediator. One of the symbols of the sun is the sun tree, which is also the world tree, which has roots of copper, branches of silver, and leaves of gold. That is the, if you like, the center of the universe as seen from our planet Earth and looking up at the infinitude of the stars in the sky, but mostly sun, moon, and morning star, which are personified and which a person living out in the countryside without the pollution of modern electricity, of course, would have a much better understanding of how the stars move in the sky. I'd like to conclude with a small vignette of my own experience. Is that one midsummer night, after spending many hours singing by a bonfire, I happened to be walking back through a very dark patch of forest, and I looked up at the sky and I saw an infinity of little dots of light stretching away to such a distance that it made my head absolutely dizzy. And it made me even more dizzy to think that what I could see with my eye, with my naked eye, was just a minuscule, an absolutely minuscule part of the universe, which is so immense and so unbelievably large that our human mind has great difficulty comprehending it and encompassing it. And then I looked down at my feet and I happened to be standing in a field of white clover. Latvians have a lot of lovely songs about white clover, and here I saw a reflection from the macrocosm above, the infinity of stars in the sky, to the infinity of white clover blossoms at my feet. And it struck me that here I was as a mediator between the macrocosm and the microcosm, and that my ancestors maybe had something when they emphasized this feeling and this understanding in their poetry and in their worldview. Man has consciousness that allows to encompass the infinitely large, the infinitely small. Human beings are increasingly acquiring instruments to truly, actually prove that these worlds exist in their almost incomprehensible complexity and numbers. But our meaning here on life is one of consciousness. We are conscious beings, we can apprehend that, and that puts us in a unique role of trying to seek our role as mediators and finding meaning in our lives. We try to look for meaning through our work, through our social institutions, through our laws, through our ideologies, through our rules and regulations and our own moral conduct and moral guidelines. I think that is, to you as planetary scientists who are used to looking at infinity, I would like to remind you that the challenge that the pre-scientific, our pre-scientific predecessors changed, the one of finding meaning in your life, remains with us, no matter how impressive the progress that science can make.